First and foremost, I must thank all of you for joining us today. And I believe this is going to be one very interesting day wherein we are going to talk about competitiveness and manufacturing. I must actually share something very interesting. This year, we have actually had Vivekananda International Foundation as a partner for this event, wherein they drove us with the idea of that how manufacturing is going to be important in this country, and they actually helped us frame and formulate this whole thing. In addition, I would like to thank two very specific people as well, that is Wilfred. I think without him, this wouldn't have been possible, so Wilfred has been a source of inspiration for the Council and for the Institute. Thanks a lot, Wilfred, for really helping us and doing this for us. One of his colleagues, Rahul Gangal. Thanks, Rahul, for this as well. In fact, I must also thank two or three very important people again. In fact, Anurag Batra, who's somewhere here. He's a perpetual latecomer, so I believe he should be here in the room, but then perfect. So Anurag, thanks a lot for helping us. Anurag is also the chairman for the business world, and thanks. I also have to thank Sukumar Ranganathan. Sukumar is the editor-in-chief for Mint. So Sukumar, the thanks goes to him as well to really make this possible as well. I must thank Dainik Bhaskar as well for supporting this great initiative. So thanks, Pradeep ji, for believing in what we are doing. And thanks a lot for all the speakers and people who had participated in this process. So without further ado, I think I would like to call on stage Wilfred Ahlberg, who's a friend, one of my fondest friends actually. In fact, we are doing a book together which should be out sometime soon in the next few months. It's called Riding the Tiger and getting published by Penguin Random House. So Wilfred, thanks for being such a great colleague and a friend.
I can't see it over here, which for a consultant is really terrible. We don't know how to talk without some slides, right? As Rajiv would be very happy to point out. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here today. It's an exciting moment for us, an exciting moment for India. What I want to do is just very, very quickly set the stage and talk about India's resilience. We basically have heard a lot about, India, challenges, problems, India-China comparison. I would like to look at a couple of numbers and put things somewhat in perspective. If we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, this one is hopefully working. Yes. So if we see what happened in India, since the 1980s, we've grown at least at 5%. We've increased GDP by a factor 7.5x. We've grown 3 times as fast as the world average. In this time, we had an opportunity to build more than 45,000 kilometers of highway. That's more than the Autobahn system in Germany. We've taken hundreds of millions out of poverty. In short, we've driven the country forward. Maybe not as much as all of us would have liked. Most of us are impatient. But definitely, we've been successful. This is not a story that has not worked at all. Now, if we look at what China did, everybody says, well, the Chinese know how to do business. They have everything under control. I wouldn't take away the benefit and the success of the Chinese, but I would like to point out that, the Chinese started 13 years earlier than us. And if we look at GDP India in 2014 vis-a-vis GDP China in 2001, we are at 88%. Now, that clearly indicates that we are not that far off. That perception is potentially much, much worse than real action on the ground. And the other point is, we've not overinvested. The Chinese have built roads to nowhere, cities that are empty, airports that honestly make you feel like you're the only person on the planet. Our airports are full. They're like a LaGuardia, a JFK, Frankfurt, right? We have not overinvested. Yes, we can and will invest more, but definitely we haven't wasted money to the point that we've seen in some degree in China. If we look at our companies, if you look at the top 50 companies over the last 10 years, those have grown at a CAGR of 21%. Indian entrepreneurs have been able to leverage the opportunity of this country very effectively for their own benefit and profit, obviously, but also for the good of the country. And if you look at what the kind of challenges are that these entrepreneurs faced, they did not have an opportunity to build on good government-specific advantages. We know that the infrastructure is still a challenge. We know that GST has not been implemented. Nevertheless, Indian players have been successful simply because they were able to build companies that are highly competitive, even on a global level. We have Rajiv here, and he'll tell you about his export success. He's present in 50 countries. In 30 countries, he's de facto the number one, just in a few, the number two in the two-wheeler market. That's the kind of capability that we've built in companies. We have JSW, who's overcome some challenges in terms of iron ore crisis very successfully. We are resourceful. We are able to compete internationally, and we are also typically interested in higher margin, innovation-driven businesses because, again, on a cost-for-cost basis, we just cannot compete with the Chinese. Now, the story is not at an end. What we've shown here are just a few indicators. Interest rates have come down. Domestic savings have gone up. Disposable income has gone up like nobody's business. India's story is a story of aspiration, is a story of internal consumption, and this story will continue. It is not something that will sort of come to a stop anytime soon. The second point that I want to make is what you hear often when you talk to people in the West. I used to hear this all the time when I was selling engineering services out of Bangalore in 2001 and 2002. And people told me, well, with your kind of salary increases, there is no way on this planet that you will be competitive in 5 years. We are in 2015, we're still competitive. And the reason is salary increases have been lesser than productivity increases according to the International Labour Organization. If you look at 2008 to 2011, salaries actually de facto, according to them, went down and productivity increases were significant. Another point that's often made about India is that while India is isolated from the rest of the world, we don't feel the impact of the global economy. Again, I don't think that's quite true. Our ratio, import vis-a-vis GDP, export vis-a-vis GDP, is in line with China. We're not as big, but we are as sensitive to the vagaries of the global market. If Europe today is not working well, that's something that we do feel, right? So we are integrated to the same degree as China. In terms of confidence in the Indian economy, since 2006, there's been a dramatic increase in FDI in India. This increase was at a level of about 30 billion a year, despite a global financial crisis, despite the challenging years that we had under the UPA 2, clearly indicating that today companies understand that India is a must. You have to be present with your assets in this country if you want to leverage the promise of this market going forward. Another point is that in terms of outward foreign direct investment, after the OFDI ceiling was lifted in 2003, there's been a dramatic activity of Indian companies going out buying assets abroad. There have been some failures, obviously. M&A typically is not that easy. But overall, Indian companies have bought access to markets, access to clients, leveraged technology, and leveraged their own capabilities, both in terms of efficient manufacturing and back-end operations as well as technology, to build and continue to build a global position. Now, typically, India has depended a lot on services. Everybody knows this. We are a service economy. Now, today, what the government is saying is we would like to actually move into manufacturing because we need jobs for everybody. We cannot depend to create jobs only for IT engineers. It's just not viable. It needs to be efficient manufacturing, but we need those jobs in India. Now, if you look at labor cost, today we are actually in a good position. In China, there's been an increase in labor cost. We are comparatively lower. So we have, for the first time, labor cost, factor cost advantages vis-a-vis China that we can potentially leverage. Now, we have to be aware we are not the only competitors in this. There's Vietnam, there's Indonesia, there are Philippines, there are other countries that are A, cost-effective, and B, have large markets or large English-speaking populations. So we have an opportunity, but we have to compete for this opportunity. The second point is that manufacturing is sexy, not only for India, not only for emerging markets, but also for developed nations. After the global financial crisis, everybody, including the UK and the United States, went back and said, listen, manufacturing is something that I would like to have in my own country. It is something that generates jobs and tax income. I just need it. The second point about manufacturing is it creates service jobs, because if you build a product, you also have to take care of that product, build services around it. So Europe has basically driven this whole Industry 4.0 initiative, an integration of physical systems with the Internet of Things, with very, very cheap and learning robots, which will potentially, over the next 10 to 15 years, bring down the labor content in manufacturing dramatically. Now, this is a threat in some sense to India, in the sense that these countries are trying to keep manufacturing. India does not have the same starting point as China. When the Chinese started with their manufacturing activities, we will need to figure out a way how to create value in India, facing a situation where simply labor may not be the determining factor anymore. Our own position in this is a little bit challenged, because our automation, with the exception of some leading-edge factories, is relatively low as a country. And the key challenge for us will be to find a way to the Internet of Things with an Indian approach, meaning a low capex approach. Today, what the West is thinking is, I have to spend tons of money to make this happen. Now, we've shown in the past that we can actually produce at quality with much less capex investment, and that is one of the challenges that we will have to look at going forward. Second point is innovation. There's a lot of innovation that's happening in India, but this is an area where, again, a cooperation between academia, the government, and companies is something that can be strengthened. This is a challenge in the sense that the Chinese today are publishing 35 patents vis-a-vis one Indian patent. So we need to take this challenge seriously, and I'm out of time, so let me just summarize. We are resilient. We've performed for a very long time. We will perform going forward. I don't think there is any doubt about this. The second thing is we have performed both in government and in the private sector. Indian companies today are ready, many of them, not across the board, but many of them are clearly ready to take on the world and have taken on the world and will continue to do so quite effectively. And last but not least, manufacturing and innovation is a must going forward. It's the right focus of the government. We need to make sure that we leverage the opportunity that we have by China moving away from make in India, make in China, to innovate in China. We need to leverage this window of opportunity over the next 5 to 10 years to really create the 100 million jobs that the government set as a target. It's a steep target, it's a real challenge, and it'll require everybody to do his part. With that, again, I am extremely happy to have all of you here. I'd like to thank the speakers who've come and support us in this venture. And obviously, Amit, he's making lots of comments about me, but he's the real driving force of this event. So thank you again for